with Gene Price, where we dive deep into faith and life. Talk about relationships and family too. All the things that matter most to you. Real talk, real faith, real life. With God by your side, through the ups and downs, and helping you turn your life around. From the strongholds of every day to the blessings that come your way. We'll explore it all with the heart of grace and a focus on love in a sacred place. Real talk, real faith, real life. With God by your side, guiding you through the ups and downs, and helping you turn your life around. From the struggles of every day to the blessings that come your way. We'll explore it all with the heart of grace and a focus on love in a sacred place. Real talk, real faith, real life. With God by your side, guiding you through the ups and downs, and helping you turn your life around. So come on in and take a seat and let your heart and soul be free as we journey together on this road. Faith and love, light in the low. Light in the low. Real talk, real faith, real talk, real faith, real life. With God by your side, guiding you through the ups and downs, and helping you turn your life around. Real talk, real faith, real life. With God by your side, guiding you through the ups and downs, and helping you turn your life around. Bringing faith, hope, and love to life. Join us in this journey hand in hand as we walk together.
Passionate love. You have two independent words, passion and love, fused together to make a strong definition. Passion is the force that drives the love for something. It's the fuel that keeps love going. Love without passion is like a body without a soul. It's like a car without an engine. No movement would happen. And just in case you are wondering how you can tell if someone truly loves you or if you truly love someone, sacrifice. Sacrifice for one another will indicate if you truly love each other. And sacrifice is giving up something for another thing that is far more important. Just like giving up that piece of pie for your girl that is far more important. Or it's the release of something in your possession in an exchange for another thing that you love. This is exactly what God did when He released and sacrificed His only Son, Jesus, just to have us. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him will not perish, but have everlasting life.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. As you can see, I have my co-host with me. I have Derek Price, my husband. He's here to co-host and share in tonight's discussion. We're looking forward to tonight's discussion because it's going to be really great. It's a topic I think that we kind of talk about in church with marrieds, but again, we are excited to be on tonight. I have a wonderful guest who has knowledge of what we're going to be talking about. Before we get started, let me have my husband Derek introduce. Should you say good
Yeah,
evening?
just say baby greet, I guess. Hey,
Start over. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. Listen, I am so glad that you tuned in. We have a wonderful show scheduled tonight. I have a wonderful guest that's going to be on with us. But as you can see, I have a co-host tonight. I would like to introduce everyone to my husband, Derek Price. Glad to
well,
have you on the show tonight, sir.
good to be here, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to Real Talk with Derek and G Price.
Yes, tonight is Derek and Jean Price. We're excited. We're going to be talking about something that I think is so relevant and is so great. Listen, I want you to go get couples, singles, those that you know that would want to talk about this. Tonight, we're going to be talking about relationships, and we have a professional with us tonight, somebody that knows. He works in the counseling field along with his wife. So help me welcome to the show tonight Daryl, and I want you to welcome him. He's from Better Together Counseling. Can you come on out and join us, please? Mr. Wilson. There you are.
Hey, good
How are you?
evening. I'm doing well, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Thank you for being on Real Talk tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's
Absolutely.
been a while.
It's been a while. Before we get started, why don't you and as you can see, I have a co host with me tonight. My husband.
Yes, I do. Hey,
Yes.
Pastor, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. It's good to see you.
Yes, good to see you as well.
Well,
Thank
why
you.
don't you introduce yourself to my viewing audience for those that don't know you?
Okay, my name is Daryl Wilson, and I am one of the counselors here at Better Together Counseling. I do this job with my wife, Denise Wilson, and we have been doing uh, this ministry for about 17, 18 years. We have our own private practice. We both recently retired a couple of years ago and have been able to focus on our practice full time. So, and it's been really, really a blessing because it's been really keeping us busy. And, we just look forward to paying it forward to all of our clients and being here with you tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on Real Talk. Tonight, it's a heavy discussion. We're going to be talking about different perspectives of men in relationships. So,
Yeah.
as we get started, Bishop is smiling. Okay, so my first question, really, to the both of us, from a male perspective, what are the most common mistakes that men make in relationships? Kind of like, and what can they leave behind in this year? What are your
I,
thoughts?
I I think that one of the things that a lot of men struggle with is uh, fighting themselves and not allowing themselves to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to be honest with themselves, and not feeling like they have to put on a facade for everyone else. Um, just not to be able to please and appease others because you know it's important for a lot of men uh, how they portray themselves to others, and a lot of times it's done um, at the sacrifice of being who you are, who you really, really are. It's easy for us to put on a facade, for everyone else, but you can't put on a facade for that person that's in the mirror, and they have to try to get in touch with their feminine side and learn how to be okay not always being okay.
That's interesting. Thank you for that. What's your perspective, Bishop Price, on that? Because as you were talking, Pastor Darrell, I can understand that from a woman's perspective because we
Yeah.
kind of, that emotional part, who you are, you really when you look in the mirror. So thank you for sharing. And what's your perspective on that?
Well, I think that men, it's hard to find. It's hard for men to find safe places. Um,
Yeah.
it's hard to find them among their their own friends because there's so much trying to prove, um,
Right.
so much trying to, from an egotistical standpoint, trying to prove to the other guy that he's
Mhm.
still the man, right?
Mhm.
So creating those safe places or having those safe places where you can communicate how you
Mhm.
feel,
Yeah.
um, I think would help tremendously. And if women can create that space,
Yes.
I think it would help tremendously in relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely, and because one of the things I've learned is that men communicate openly when they feel safe.
Yes.
Because if we don't feel safe, if we feel like if we're forced into that cave, see that cave is our default,
Okay.
and oftentimes the cave when we go in it, it's not always easy to get us to come out of it.
Interesting. So saying that to the point of what both of you are saying, because I kind of wanted to know how you communicate when you have those emotions that come up. Is vulnerability, does that play a role at maybe as to why you kind of stay in the cave? Does vulnerability kind of work along with that? Either one of you can kind of chime in on that.
Go right ahead, Pastor.
Well, so I think vulnerability is. I think again, I can only speak for most of the men I know and myself. Part of our growth and development is learning how to handle and process rejection. So we don't take it too
Hmm.
well. And when you have, when we're very, very cautious, it would almost be like, you know how right now I learned how to when I know the water's cold, like we went
Hmm.
swimming when we were away. I know I can feel on my feet is cold, but I can't stand waiting,
Mm,
slowly getting in.
yeah,
I'd rather just jump right in.
get right in there.
Right.
They're not going to do
Right.
that. Most men have to feel their way into the conversation to feel comfortable enough
Mm,
that they can share what they feel. Give you a perfect example, and I'm sure my brother Darryl, you'll understand. Is it doctor? Is
No,
it okay?
no, just Pastor Darrell. Yeah, thank you.
Pastor Darryl. So I'm
Hmm.
sure you can appreciate this, right? So years ago, I was in church. I was in my 20s, early 20s. We were married, 23 years old, young man. I had a lot of stuff that I had to deal with, and um, even though my persona says that I'm outgoing and I'm charismatic and love to be around people, inside I knew I had a lot of insecurities,
Hmm.
and
mm,
I knew that I had low what we would call low self esteem.
Hmm.
So one day I'm walking with my pastor. She's on her way. We're going through the airport at LaGuardia, and I said to her after she did that teaching, I said, Pastor, you know what? I have low self esteem. She looked at me and said, please, you don't have no low self-esteem. Now, in her mind,
mhm.
Hmm.
it was just probably her just poo-pooing it,
Right.
being just funny about it. But in my mind, I
Yeah.
said to myself, I can't open up to her again
Interesting.
because I
God.
was testing the waters of how she would view me
Yes.
when
Yeah.
I told her that I had low self-esteem. Because again, I'm young, I'm still immature. I didn't know. So I needed to know that I was safe with her and that I can move forward into the conversation. But once she said that, shut right down.
And
Yeah.
that's to what you were saying, Pastor Darrell, about feeling safe
Yeah.
in in that. Can you speak to what Bishop is saying about where do men go when they don't feel safe? I know you mentioned the cave, but where do they go within themselves?
Within themselves.
Oh, okay, I answered it.
Yeah. That's
That's
where they go within themselves. See, one of the things that I say all the time is that one of the best relationships that we can have is the relationship we have with ourselves. Because see, if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, we will struggle to have a good relationship with anyone else, because not having a good relationship with ourselves put us in a position where we have to now make everyone else believe that
Mm,
we're good when we really aren't. That's why they talk about men suffering in silence,
yes.
because we can be in the presence of our homeboy, our road dog. We grew up our ride or die dude, but even with him, we
Mhm.
will only allow him into our space, but so far.
Yes. Yes.
But so far. We can't even be vulnerable and transparent with him. And that's our road dog. That's hey, we do everything together, you know, but we don't open up in that manner because it's not our normal,
Mhm.
and it's not our default. In order to grow yourself, you got to know yourself.
Wow.
And you have to be able to look in the mirror
Mhm.
and, like I said, be okay with not being okay. One of the things that we don't do well, when I say we, I mean us as a people. One of the things that we don't do well is counseling and therapy.
That's true.
Right.
Wow.
Why is it such a stigma though when people talk about counseling or therapy? Like if we were to come to you as a doctor and God forbid, what somebody's diagnosed with cancer or something, that's okay. But when it comes to emotional health or
Mhm.
anything going on, mental health, depression, men or women, why is there such a stigma in our culture and abroad? Why is there such a stigma, Bishop? And then of course, Pastor, if you could speak to
Mhm.
that.
Well,
Sure.
I think Pastor probably can speak to it from a clinical, from a
Yes.
professional standpoint than I can. But I think that sometimes ego just gets in the way. I mean, I remember the first time we even talked about counseling. My first thought was, what can anybody tell me? What are they going to tell me that I don't know?
Correct.
So a lot of it, I think, starts with ego.
Okay.
And just to piggyback off of that, the other aspect of it is the myth of counseling and therapy. See, a lot of people associate going to counseling and going to therapy with something being wrong with you, or that you're going to counseling and you're going to therapy because you have a problem.
Mhm.
And that's one of the myths that here at Better Together Counseling we're trying to dispel, because people don't just come to counseling because they have a problem. A lot of people do, but
Yes.
it's not everybody. Some people come because they want enrichment in their relationship or in their personal life. They want enhancement in their relationship or personal life, or they feel a little stagnated, and sometimes they just need to talk
Wow.
and just get some things off of
Yeah.
their chest in a safe space.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
That's for sure. Were you gonna say something,
Yeah.
Bishop?
So, Pastor, there are probably some sisters who are joining us here today. They're online. They're on with us, and they have relationship concerns and issues.
Mhm.
And they have talked to their boyfriend, their husband about counseling, and he has responded with this negative, hey, no, I don't need no counseling. Or they just know they just know his temperament, and they're like, how do I even have that conversation? So what would you say to some of the sisters that are watching here that desperately need intervention in their relationship but don't know how to pitch that to their
Right.
man?
That's a great question, by the
Well, one of the things that I would say is that if that is something that she feels is needed for the relationship, he's unwilling to do it, then you do it.
way. So,
Don't not do it because he's not doing it, because you could be the catalyst to change his perspective and his
yeah.
willingness to want to come. Because see, if you're doing it and then he sees the changes and so on and so forth in you, then that may kind of pique his interest to want to come. I always make it a point to commend the men when they're sitting before my wife and I with their partner or even by themselves. Because here's what's really uh, amazing to me is, like, our phone is ringing daily, several times a day. And what I'm noticing is that a large portion of the people on the other end of that phone is men
Wow.
that's calling for their relationship. So when they're sitting in front of us, I always make it a point to commend them and thank
That's
them for being there,
yes.
because it's not something
Yes.
that we readily do in our relationships. I've had men sitting in front of us, and their fiance, their wife, or whoever will say, well, he really didn't want to come because he said he don't, he don't like people in in his business, and so on and so forth. And my response to him is that, well, if the two of you don't work out, or if you go end up in divorce, guess what? Everybody gonna know your business.
Yes.
Then what?
Mhm.
Wow, good point.
Why not swallow that? And if you can seek help, how can you not want to do something that you've never tried?
Right. Right.
But most of us have a misunderstanding of what it actually is, and what it entails. I had a guy recently come in. He's dating this woman, and the two of them come in together. He walked in with an attitude.
Mm.
You can see it in his facial expression. You can see it all in his body language. And when we started talking, and I'm like, okay, so tell us, why are we here? I'm here because she wanted me to be here.
Mhm.
That's the only reason I'm here, because she wanted me to be here. By the time that hour and a half ended, because that was an initial consultation,
Mhm.
by the time that initial consultation ended, he wouldn't shut up.
Wow. Wow.
He gave me a hug at the end and said how much he appreciated what he experienced, because he didn't want to be there.
So
Pastor,
he felt. Oh,
Looking forward,
I was
and he
gonna
was looking forward to coming back.
say, you see, we both jumping in there.
Yeah,
So as you even talking, Pastor, I was saying he felt safe after he realized that he could feel safe.
yeah, but
correct.
so what technique, Pastor, did you use? Because
Yeah,
that was
what was
my
the
thinking.
strategy? I was
What
thinking
strategy
strategy.
did you
Yeah.
use to get him to
Mhm.
open up?
Yeah.
Listen, let me tell you. I'm going to tell you. It's very simple. It's very simple. Let him talk. See, another thing that we don't do well in our relationships is listen. I just let him talk, because a lot of men feel like they're not heard. So now you have a voice, and your voice is being heard. See, when we can start positioning ourselves in our relationships to start listening to learn from each other, as opposed to listening to defend,
Mhm.
listening to deflect, and listening to justify, we can change the trajectory of our relationship. Listening to learn, and not
Wow.
listening to defend. That's why a lot of couples struggle with resolving conflict. See, because we're not listening to
Right.
one another.
Right.
So if the conflict is about this remote control,
Mhm.
and we're talking about this remote control, the moment something is said that pushes your button, the conversation is no longer going to be about the remote control. Why? Because now you're going to do one or two things. You're going to either start talking over the person, or you're just going to sit there patiently and wait for them to shut up
Mhm.
so you can respond to the button that they just pushed.
If you wait for them to
Right.
shut up. Yeah.
Yeah. So the conversation is no longer going to be about the remote control. The
That's right.
conversation is now going to switch to the
That
button
to the
that
button.
you just pushed. And usually, when you start addressing the button that was pushed, a whole lot of other stuff that's unresolved
Yeah.
starts coming up into the conversation. So by the time that conversation is over, what we call it heated fellowship. But by the time that's over, guess what? The problem, which was the remote that we were talking about, the
Mhm.
problem is still the problem.
Yeah.
Why?
Absolutely.
Because we didn't resolve anything. And
Right.
then you'll say 3 months, 6 months, a year down the line, well, we talked about that. Yes, you did. But you didn't resolve anything.
So
That's why
true.
you're talking about it again.
Right. I
Listening to learn.
This is so good. Listening
Mm.
to learn. We're going to take a commercial break. We're going to
Yeah.
come back with Pastor Darrell and Bishop Price. This is so good. Listen, you still have time. Grab your father, your uncle, your brother. You want to hear what these men are saying tonight. We'll be right back on Real Talk with Gene and Darrell
There you
Price.
go.
Be right back.
Derek and Gene.
Passionate love. You have two independent words, passion and love, fused together to make a strong definition. Passion is the force that drives the love for something. It's the fuel that keeps love going. Love without passion is like a body without a soul. It's like a car without an engine. No movement would happen. And just in case you are wondering how you can tell if someone truly loves you or if you truly love someone, sacrifice. Sacrifice for one another will indicate if you truly love each other. And sacrifice is giving up something for another thing that is far more important. Just like giving up that piece of pie for your girl that is far more important. Or it's the release of something in your possession in an exchange for another thing that you love. This is exactly what God did when he released and sacrificed his only son, Jesus, just to have us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Gene Price and Darrell Price on tonight. My co-host is with me. We've been having a great conversation with Pastor Darrell Wilson from Better Together Counseling. Listen, it's been great. We've been talking about what's going on with men on the inside as well, diving into how men strategize and how they handle things. Pastor Darrell, why don't you come back to Real Talk with Gene Price and Darrell Price?
There
God
we
bless you,
go.
Pastor. Welcome back. Before we
Thank
went to
you.
commercial break, we left off on a note of listening and learning.
Right.
How do we take that strategy, right, and
Mhm.
explain to us how it works in a relationship? But how do you begin to really put it into action? Because I think that's really interesting because that goes with communication. That is a big part in a relationship. So how do we start putting that into action?
Well, one of the things that we have to do is we have to be able to acknowledge that it is an issue, the listening to learn aspect of the relationship. Because, yes, communication is extremely important in any relationship. But what we have to also understand is that when it comes down to communication, communication is not just about us talking, but communication is also about how we communicate with each other. See, in relationships, we have, different styles of communication. We have to be able to pay attention and be intentional about paying attention to what those different styles of communication
Yes.
is so that we can meet the need
Hmm.
of your partner. Because I may have one impression of something, and my wife may have another impression of something, but whatever that impression is, I have to get a clear understanding of what that is.
Hmm.
And in order for me to do that, I have to listen with intent to learn.
Yes.
Because I always say we have to be careful. We have to be careful. Be careful about our normals. What our normals is.
Interesting.
You because you've done something a certain way for a long period of time doesn't mean it's normal.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's only normal to you because whatever that certain thing is, that's the only way that you've done it. But to the
Right.
next person, your normal may not be so normal.
Right. That's a great point.
That's good.
What is your perspective on that, Bishop, as far as the how and the strategy of getting going. That's a great point.
I think,
Sometimes normal to us could be normal, but it's really not normal, or it might not be correct.
yeah, and I think, we bring to our relationships again what we think is normal, and our upbringing, how we're raised, our family dynamic. You know, they don't teach communication skills in
Yeah.
school, so when you get into relationships, it's just this is the way I am, this is the way I
Mhm.
operate. But I think Pastor laid it out very beautifully, and it helps both sides, whether there's sisters listening and brothers, people in relationship. Um, the ear has to be the posture. There has to be a posture
Yes.
when
Yeah.
you're of listening.
Yeah.
You can tell when someone's listening.
Hmm.
You can also tell when someone's not listening. And
Yeah.
you mentioned those three words, and those are powerful. You said when people in conversation, the person is either defending,
Hmm.
justifying, or
Hmm.
deflecting.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
So if
That's
as
correct.
a man,
Hmm.
I come to the table, and I want to talk. First of all, I understand those three A's must be present. The man, I must be willing to admit I have a problem. I acknowledge it first,
Acknowledge.
then admit, meaning in verbally communicating, say, listen, here's my situation, here's my issue, all right? And let's address it together. But as
Right.
soon as the other person on the other end, whether man or woman, says, you can see in their face, right away, they're not listening right away. That creates a whole that changes the whole dynamic of the conversation.
Absolutely. And because oftentimes with many of us, we go into relationships and it's like flicking on a switch. We go into relationships and we start functioning in the relationship based on what we know.
Yes.
So whatever it was that we did in our last relationship, the one before that, or the one before that, that's what we're going to do in this relationship. Now,
Wow, interesting.
what if what you've learned about relationships with whoever that you've learned it from, whether it was your mother and father, your grandparents, your aunt, whoever you learned what a relationship looked like. What if what you learned was dysfunction?
Right. Right.
Then now you've learned how to function in a relationship, making dysfunction
Hmm.
look normal. So
Normal.
you've
Right.
learned how to function in dysfunction, and you've made dysfunction look normal
Right.
because that's what you know. We teach what we know, we reproduce who we are. So that's what a lot of us do in relationships. But see, what one of the things that I try to impress upon people when you're in the dating phase, you're in the dating stage. I always say that dating is data, meaning that you should be trying to collect as much
Yeah.
information from the person that you're dating
Right.
while you're dating,
Hmm.
as opposed to after you say I do, now you're discovering all of these things
Hmm.
about your partner that you don't like. That's why the divorce rate is so high,
Right.
because nobody wants to do the work. When the work starts getting hard, when the for better or for worse start happening, when the worst start happening, we're ready to kick rocks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is it always so easy for us to want to change our partners as opposed to changing ourselves?
That's good.
Wow, that's good.
That was really
That's
good. Yeah. Because we don't want to put the work in. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes
That's right.
discipline,
That's
consistency.
right.
That's a
That's
great
right.
point. Yes.
Relationships are work.
Our work.
But
Yes.
relationships can work if
Yes.
you have two people who are willing to do the work
Yes.
individually and as a couple.
Yeah. You know, along those lines, I want to just kind of pivot just a little bit, but stay in that context. When you're talking about putting in the work, how do we manage as couples or as men and or as women? How do we deal with emotional intimacy? How do we deal with that in relationship? And Pastor Dow and Bishop Price, if you can speak to that.
You want me to go first?
Oh yes, yeah. I'm really blessed by this, Pastor. Thank you so much. Yeah, you first, sir.
Thank you. First, I think one of the first things that we have to do is we have to be able to get in touch with our emotions. And as men, that's not something that we do well either. Because we're taught from a very very young age to suppress
Yes.
our emotions. You know what I mean? You know, growing up as a little boy, you bang your knee, your elbow, and you're bleeding. You know, and what does mom tell you? You know, big boys don't cry.
Right.
So from a very young age, we're taught to suppress emotions. That's why a lot of men, rarely see men cry, because it's a sign of, for them, for a lot of men, it's a sign of being weak.
Mhm.
You know, I will stand on the mountaintop, and I could be amongst a million men. If my emotions is saying to me, cry, Daryl,
Mhm.
Daryl's gonna cry.
Right.
And I will be just as manly and masculine as I was before I walked into that room, because I always feel like it's the ones who are fighting those emotions and fighting back those tears, those are the weak guys. But it takes a strong man to
Yes.
stand amongst men and shed a tear, or try to connect with with those emotions. So you have to first be able to connect with it before you can do anything else with emotions.
Yeah. You know, Bishop Price, you work a lot with men. You mentor young men. Men are drawn to the different things that you have going on. Can, of course, along with what Pastor Darrell is saying, can you kind of pivot a little bit and discuss? Have you come in contact with men that struggle with that, like being able to let go, like Pastor's saying?
So there's a phenomenon that's going on that um, I'm seeing unlike in the past, and that is that men um, are reaching out.
Mm.
So Pastor said this in the first half. He said the phone rings during the day. Him and his wife have their company. Those calls, most of those calls are from men.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Now I was surprised. I know men reach out to me because they say, Pastor, I want to be mentored. I want to talk.
Yes.
Saying I want you to show me about business. So I see it on the entrepreneurship side, but you're seeing it on a professional side, a
Yes.
phenomenon that I have not seen. I'm curious,
That's right.
why this change all of a sudden? Because that wasn't the way it was 20
Yes.
years ago.
That's
Men
right.
didn't want to.
Yes.
Now they are open to talk. It makes me believe, and you can answer, Pastor, because I really want to understand where that's
Sure.
coming from. What your thought is about that? But I'm seeing, like, I think men are becoming desperate in relationships. They're like, I can't. They can't. They find it very hard to communicate, maybe to a sister.
Okay.
So now it's a twofold whammy. Before it was the man didn't want to talk. Now he's like, yo, I want to talk to this sister, but I can't
Right.
because they're calling you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of men are learning about being in relationships, because see, you have a lot of people, men and women, but I'm going to stay on task with the men. You have a lot of men who want to be in a relationship. Sometimes we have to be taught how to be in a relationship, because you have a lot of men who grew up in single parent households, and that single parent was mom or auntie
Mhm.
or female, that that they grew up around. So we have a client that he grew up around aunts, not his mother, aunts, and female cousins. It was a house full of women. He was the only male in that household. He struggles with being able to communicate effectively
Right.
what he feels.
Okay.
What he feels. It's like and it's not that he doesn't feel. He feels. He just doesn't know how to articulate
Mhm.
what he feels or how he feels. And I'm saying to him, I'm like, bro, listen, you got to start using your voice, because it's not that she doesn't want to hear what you have to say, but I think there's something that's keeping you from expressing what it is the way that you feel it. Because the response, I say, you have to move beyond, uh, I don't know. No, that's not an answer.
Mhm.
A lot of guys don't know how to articulate what their feelings are, be able to communicate effectively in the relationship. So what they do is they don't say much. They have to be taught how to be in a relationship, not just in a relationship, but in a healthy relationship. Because my my definition of a healthy relationship could be completely and totally different from what my wife's definition of a healthy relationship is. So where did you learn what a healthy relationship is? Because she came from a totally different background than me.
Right.
Completely different. Completely different. You talking about one flesh living, two people trying to become one?
Mhm.
We had to put in the work to
Wow.
make this work.
Wow.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we come into relationships and we come into our, I always use the analogy, we come into our relationships pulling this little red wagon. Well, what's inside that little red wagon? All our stuff is in that wagon. Stuff that we grew up with, even the dysfunction. And then when we get to the age of dating, those dating experiences that could have also been dysfunction.
Yeah.
And now we've coming into another adulthood. And now we're looking to get into a committed relationship. Well,
Dysfunction.
what is a committed relationship? What does that look like? Because I saw my daddy do this and that. And what is a committed relationship? All of these things have to be defined. And most people who are in relationships, especially if you're dating, they don't define their relationship. See, dating does not equal commitment.
Right. That's true.
Dating means you can date anybody that you want,
Hmm.
unless you have a conversation with each other saying, we're going to date each other exclusively and we're not going to date anybody else. Other than that, engagement, marriage.
Mm.
But most people, they they're dating, but they're dating like they're committed.
Hmm.
And they get upset with their partners when their partners do things that's not conducive to a committed relationship. But you're not committed.
You're
You're
not
not
committed.
in a committed relationship. You have to define it.
Wow.
That's good.
Wow. That was good. Yeah, that was really good. And that's what some people go through, because we have, conversation with people who are in dating, and then they're putting the expectation, to your point, Pastor Dow, as if the relationship is more than that. And it is so frustrating sometimes when we deal with young people and who have
Yeah.
gone through that.
Yeah. Well, this is probably for another segment,
Hmm.
but I would love for you to help our audience, if not now, maybe at another time, to talk about this new definition of relationship
Right.
that has so many different tiers that I don't even
Yes.
understand today. So
Right.
it's not so when I say I said to one of the young men in my church, I said, um, how's things going? I said, are you dating someone? He says, no. I said, okay, are you talking to him? He says, yeah, I have somebody that I talk to. So now in my mind, I'm old school. If you're talking to someone, it's someone you're just on the phone with, just having a conversation. I
Right.
found out that talking to someone is really dating.
Yeah.
And
They've redefined it for
Yes.
themselves
That's
because the way that they've redefined it is what works for them.
yes. Yes.
We didn't come from that school,
hmm
Right.
but that's what works for them. So they've redefined it.
they
Yeah.
redefined it.
Yeah.
It's like it's a lot.
It's
Yeah.
weird. Yes.
It is. But this has been absolutely phenomenal, Pastor Darrell and Bishop Price. Thank you so
Yeah.
much
No,
for
my pleasure.
talking about this. But we do need to do a part two, because I think there's still
Yeah.
so much more. I
Talk about.
agree with you, Bishop.
hmm
Maybe we can dive a little more deep into that. And of course, we'll see what Pastor Darrell's schedule is to bring that
Yeah.
conversation back up with men. And then maybe we can get with Denise, and then we can talk about I would love to sit with her and, have that conversation with women, because I think we are opening up Pandora's box.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
important.
it's
It's
important, right? It's important to really dive into. And you were saying something earlier, Pastor Dar. My mind went to the scripture that says, "Dwell with them according to knowledge." And that's how it is in that relationship. When Pastor Darrell was talking about knowing that person,
Yeah.
how you can communicate. But to my viewing audience, I want to thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Gene Price and my co-host, Bishop Derek Price. And of course, Pastor Darrell, who is a dear friend to us. We've, had him on the show so many times. And we invite Pastor Darrell, of course, to please come back. If you want to revisit or replay and see this show again, please watch it. And the next time we will put the schedule up where Pastor Darrell will be back with us, invite some men, invite fathers, so we can really dive into this, because I think the two of you have something really genuine that needs to be said. There's a strategy in this.
Amen.
And God has given us this key that this strategy can come forth. So
Amen.
I will begin to close, Pastor Darrell, for the last 30 seconds, final words, and then final words from Bishop.
Yes. Yeah.
Final words. Well, final words would be encouraged. Even in lieu of the times that we're living in, just trust God in all things. Just trust God. Because we're living in real time. It's we just gotta trust God. I posted something earlier today, and I said, the times that we're living in right now, it reminds me of when, I think it was Pontius Pilate. They they asked the people to make a choice between Jesus and Barabbas,
Yes.
the innocent man,
And guilty.
versus a criminal.
Yeah.
And who did they choose?
They chose Barabbas.
They chose Barabbas.
Yeah.
That's the times that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
So trust God in all things.
Yes, absolutely.
Trust God.
Yes. Thank you, Pastor.
No.
Bishop.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm blessed by today's conversation, and again, thank you for having me today on the show.
Yes.
Appreciate
Yes.
that. Always willing and ready to come on Real Talk with Gene Price.
Well, I'm trying to make this a monthly thing with my co-hosts to come and be on the show. So maybe when he comes back, we'll bring Pastor Darrell back. But thank you again, Bishop, for being on. And as always, Pastor, it's always a pleasure to have you in Real Talk. To my viewing audience, we'll see you next week on Real Talk with Gene Price.
Love you.
Good night.
Bless you.
Good night. Thank you.
Passionate love. You have two independent words, passion and love, fused together to make a strong definition. Passion is the force that drives the love for something. It's the fuel that keeps love going. Love without passion is like a body without a soul. It's like a car without an engine. No movement would happen. And just in case you are wondering how you can tell if someone truly loves you or if you truly love someone, sacrifice. Sacrifice for one another will indicate if you truly love each other. And sacrifice is giving up something for another thing that is far more important. Just like giving up that piece of pie for your girl that is far more important. Or it's the release of something in your possession in an exchange for another thing that you love. This is exactly what God did when He released and sacrificed His only Son, Jesus, just to have us. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him will not perish, but have everlasting life.